game about child trafficking. In order to sensitive and create awareness of child trafficking, I have created an interactive game to enlighten us about what child trafficking is all about. Trafficking of children, which is also known as child labor, is a form of human trafficking and is defined as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, and/or receipt of a child for the purpose of slavery, forced labor and exploitation. The trafficking of children for the purpose of domestic service, prostitution and other forms of exploitative labor is a widespread phenomenon in Africa, most especially in Nigeria. The causes of children and women trafficking are numerous. They include poverty, desperation to escape violence, corruption, unemployment, illiteracy and ignorance. Violence, coercion and deception are used to take victims away from their families. Regretfully, Nigeria is a source, transit and destination country for trafficked women and children. Child trafficking is a crime that exploits girls and boys for numerous purposes including forced labor and sex. There are 215 million children engaged in child labor, with 115 million of those children in hazardous work. Sometimes sold by a family member or an acquaintance, sometimes lured by false promises of education and a better life. Trafficking in children is a global problem affecting large numbers of children. Some estimates have as many as 1.2 million children being trafficked every year. There is a demand for trafficked children as cheap labor or for sexual exploitation. Children and their families are often unaware of the dangers of trafficking, believing that better employment and lives lie in other countries. After listening to this story, you must answer questions to gain access to a more interactive story when the door is opened.
15-year-old Hannah Suma cleans vegetables to cook dinner for a family. But this is not her family, and she is not paid for her work. Hannah also cares for the children and does housekeeping. Her parents gave her away when they could no longer afford to feed her.
My mother asked me to stay here to help earn money for myself and her. For myself, I want to learn to sew, so that I can have a skill for my future.
Hannah says her work is hard. She says she suffers from migraines. Children in forced labor often face abuse within families. Aid worker Jean-Ali.
They do not go to school, they just work all day without a break, without anything to eat when they are hungry. The children become very sad, without hope.
Sorting his tools, Ali Kamara says he is happy to be learning.
Trafficking of migrant children has unquestionably affected individual children and their communities in various immediate and long-term ways. It sometimes endangers the children's lives. The obvious impacts of child trafficking often mentioned is on deteriorating their education, physical and mental development. In the case of Cambodia, most children were from families in which the fathers deceased during the Cambodian Civil War. Before leaving the community of origin, migrant children trafficked in all extreme forms of child labor in this sub-region largely have only primary education or less. Many have never been to school. When they arrived in the destination country, their education's opportunity would reduce to none or nearly no chance to be schooling again. Very few may have a chance to go to an informal school or a vocational school run by local NGOs working with illegal migrant population. Mental impacts on children in prostitution usually present in emotional scars in their lives. Trafficked victims in the sex trade realize how they are viewed in the society. They usually develop ways to cope with such low self-esteem. Some of them became either aggressive or too fragile, very pessimistic, and addicted to drugs and gambling.